Okay, welcome back to season 2 of the Shots Pod, where we discuss all things Aldershot Town. We're back after the summer break, ready to go. New season is upon us, and with us to go through this first week of the season, who else, who better than the gaffer? Tommy Widdrington is with us, so we'll bring Tommy in just a second. But Dad, Howard Flint, you're also with me. How are you feeling about the new season, Dad?
I'm really positive. Since you started calling me the gaffer, Liam, I feel like, completely empowered now.
Yeah, you're the gaffer of our household, but that's about as far as it goes. Whereas
Yeah,
we are
I've
joined
got.
by the gaffer. Tommy, great to have you with us. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. Hope you're well yourselves.
We are. We're ready,
Yeah.
Dad, aren't we? We're good to go and full of expectation for this season.
Absolutely.
For now, anyway. We'll see what Tommy's starting lineup is on Saturday, and then we'll give him some grief. But for now, we're optimistic. Tommy, obviously, pre-season's just come to an end. On the face of it, Dad and I have been chatting. Looks like we've had a positive pre-season. Players have had a run out. Looks like we're getting some cohesion. Good results against some good league teams. How would you reflect on the whole on the pre-season?
Yeah, I mean, taking it as a whole entity has been good. I think obviously where we were at the beginning of this pre-season as opposed to where we were at the beginning of last were very different places. And for that reason, I can say I think the general squad as a whole are way ahead of where we were at this stage last season. That's because there was much more of an overhaul in terms of new faces into the place last year, because I felt that was required. We were going to change the style of play. We're not going to change the style of play this season. We're just going to have to change one or two faces. So because there's a lot of people we retained absolutely are au fait with the way we prepare and we play the game, the players that have come in this pre-season have gelled very, very quickly. And that's a testament to the lads already in the building, the lads who played a lot of games last season, and even the lads who have been injured for a while at the end of last season, like AJ, but people like Ollie Harfield, Theo, Jack Barham, they've had big influence on the dressing room very, very early on. And yeah, we look in a good place. I mean, you always pick up one or two niggles. The success for any pre-season is for the staff behind me to get as many people as they can available for me to disappoint on Saturday when we turn up for Forest Green. Now, at this moment in time, there will be one or two definites not available to me. That'll be Ollie Bray and Manny Madja. But other than them, and Aaron Jones. And after that, Ollie Scott's very close to back to full training, I believe. And other than that, everybody else is in training. So there are going to be some disappointed lads. I remember pulling en masse about 9 or 10 into my room at about 1:30 on the Saturday before Oxford City and said, look, you're not going to start the game, but you'll definitely play the next couple of free games. And that happened. So, all cliches and everything else, but it is a squad game and we need a lot of the players who are in the building now or who are going to come into the building. I'm sure there'll be one or two new faces still to arrive. I'm not sure when, but that will probably marry with one or two of the lads who aren't quite going to make the start and a level on a regular basis, going out to get some senior football elsewhere. But I'm really pleased with the way things have gone.
So do you think that means then that we should be up and running quicker in your mind? Obviously, less moving parts, less working on, right, half of you don't know each other. You're basically saying you think this is a more settled unit?
Well, I think we've got to this point quicker. I think when we played against Oxford City last season, everybody got a little bit excited because we scored 5 goals. And really, if you look back, that was a biopic of the season. We were very good going forward, but we were a little bit loose at the back. That's something that we've analysed and looked at right through, ongoing through last season, but particularly at the end of it. And we've identified players that we feel, well, it's not holding us back as an attacking entity, will make us stronger as a defensive unit. So that's something that I'm really looking forward to see if that bears fruit. It has seemed to be that way through the pre-season. Certainly in training sessions, I can see there are players with the primary, in them to stop the ball from going in their goal. And that's a real, a big thing if you're a defensive-minded coach or if you're a defensive-minded player. But we haven't signed players just to defend. They all will fit the model that we want in the different areas that we the positions we play. But the proof of the pudding's always in eating, and do we expect more? Well, we got a new group of players. So what I don't want to do, I don't want to make any backward steps, and that means standing still. I don't want to do that. So, we look to try and recreate as much of the good stuff that we gave everybody last year, and look to eradicate some of the stuff that we didn't like so much. And that for me will be progress.
Mm-hmm. Tommy, just stepping back to that, I have a picture in my mind of you, getting 8 or 9 in your office at 1:30. Is that sort of something that you really learn about the players? Because I can imagine some people are really upset and sort of sulk potentially, and other people take it on the chin. Or what? Is that a really significant point of view, learning about the players?
Last season it probably was, because there was a lot of them players that I didn't know. Now this season there may be a mix between lads who've just come into the building who I don't know so well, but some of the lads will have been in the building and they may have to take that disappointment of not starting the first game. So the ultimate answer to your question, yeah, you do learn a lot about players, and I always say this to them, whether it's in front of you guys on the pitch, where 1 or 2 lads that show too much disappointment for very, very small incidents, the least you can do that, or the less you do that, I think the more focused you can be. So, admittedly, listen, if I ever got left out of a team when I was playing, I didn't like it, but I wouldn't go knocking on the manager's door at the time, and that's the sort of thing that I try and instill into my group of players, in that there's a time to be disappointed, there's a time to knock on my door, and 1:30 on a Saturday before we play in at 3 o'clock isn't that. Neither's after the game, by the way. It depends if we won or lost. Mm-hmm. A time between games, I've got no problem with explaining a little further, and sometimes, some players don't warrant an explanation as to why. They probably realise why. They're maybe not ready because of their age or experience or lack thereof. Or 1 or 2 players, particularly coming up to this weekend, will feel quite rightly that they could easily start the game and they might not. And that takes a little bit of explaining from a manager to a player. Something that I had some managers do very well and some managers not even attempt. And they just said, I'm the manager, you just deal with it. So I think I'm a little bit more emotionally attached than some of the managers I was with. And I try to make sure that I dissipate the result of the disappointment, rather than, I don't mind handing disappointment out, that's part of my job, but I like to be able to comfort them and sort of reassure, and they wouldn't be here if I didn't think I could play them, so they have to believe that, and some of them have pushed their way into me more thinking. Some have jumped over players that they may well have been behind, but that's all on an individual basis, and they'll probably stay in house.
Yeah. I know in the past I've heard you say that you're good school. Did you have some old school managers who literally didn't explain why you'd been dropped or anything at all?
I mean, yeah, it wasn't even that so much. I just feel some managers all managers don't like confrontation with players. And there's a reason for that, because you can't lose. If you lose a confrontation with a player, particularly in front of the other players, then your credibility just goes through the floor. So anybody who's been around your Aldershot Football Club since I've been in will tell you I've never lost an argument in the dressing room. Now, that's not because I'm clever or what, it's just because that has to be the way. I've had managers historically, one in particular that I thought he was a good manager. In fact, his record at the club that I played for is probably second to very little, in Alan Buckley at Grimsby. But his man management of me was particularly poor. And now, I felt that at the time, and I tried to reason with the guy, but he just was not for reasoning. He didn't like me, not for any other reason that he didn't sign me. He inherited me. And now that was his way of working with it, and that's the way we dealt with it. But only a couple of years ago, I went back to Grimsby to play in a charitable fixture, a Legends game, and Alan actually came up to me and was very, very, very adult, and actually apologised for how he treated me back in the 90s, which I thought was a big thing for him to do. And I actually countered him with a really good comment and said, look, all you did was you taught me how not to man manage. I said, that's helped me. That's really helped me, because he used to make me do things you should never have done on top of my job. So, yeah, I mean, I think I've lived and learned a lot through different managers and different eras. And I like to think I try and take the best bits from the better managers and leave the worst bits from the poorer ones. at the door when I walk in, and I'm probably a mixture of all of them.
Yeah. Thank you. I remember Alan Buckley. Yeah, remember him.
Great coach, by the way. I've got to say, great coach.
Yeah. Tough guy. I remember. Sort of steely. Reminds me of Mark Robbins. Quite a steely sort of character. Small and diminutive. They often are, aren't they? Just coming back to today, and there's been quite a shake-up. Looking at the list of players that were here last year and the new ones. What can you tell us about the players that were offered contracts but moved on? So Cian Harris, Ryan Glover, Kwame Thomas. Obviously, nothing personal in the sense of we don't want to know details like that. But what can you tell us about sort of the process and how it works? Because I know you are very keen that players want to be here and play. And those three were offered contracts apparently and didn't stay.
Okay. Well, all three of them were offered contracts before the end of the season, first and foremost. Two of them way before the end of the season. So I got the idea, particularly with Cian, that he was going to move way before the end. Not way before the end, but certainly a few weeks before the end of the season, and I resigned to that fact. So we upped the look for his replacement, not in a like for like, but certainly in somebody who can play on the ball but can defend a little bit to the eye. More, more robustly, I would say, and we went and got Luke Jenkins. So from that point of view, that was really, in effect, he's gone out the door. We need to bring something in. He's younger. He's on the same sort of pathway in terms of his career, and he was one of the outstanding centre backs statistically in the one division below. The fact that we brought Lachlan Bird in as well a little bit later, because Kobe Rowe had moved on. Again, Kobe was another one that was offered a new contract, albeit not at the same level he was on before. He decided to and on, we decided not. We went and got somebody else. So I made sure that the club were in the best position they could be as early as we could be.
Yeah.
So and it's strange. During the summer, the players become really powerful if they're out of contract for a period. And then we go back to work. And then that power just diminishes and diminishes and diminishes until such time, like now, the power really switches to the club. And we've got players now, and you mentioned one of them, who still isn't involved with any club.
Yeah.
Ryan was offered a contract, a substantially better contract than he was on. And he made it very clear to me that he wanted to go up the levels, which I have no problem with. However, the club had put a lot of work into Ryan over the 2 to 3 years that he's been here. And with his age being under 24, the club are entitled to keep his registration.
Yeah.
As a matter of management, it's my job to make sure we get recompensated if he was to move on. Now, he hasn't moved anywhere yet. So we're now in a situation where Ryan isn't playing football. He's not connected to any football club. And he's not training with us. But we retain his registration. We can retain his registration until he's 24. Now, I can tell you a little bit in terms of the contract that Ryan was under before I got to the club included a buyout clause. So that seemed to be quite prevalent in a lot of contracts before I got there. And there was a figure on there. Now, had he still been under contract and someone wanted to take him last Christmas, I could have said, you can only have him if you get that number. A bit like what happened with Lorent.
Yeah.
Okay. So that didn't happen. He came to the end of his contract. Whether Ryan thought this or not, he is still contractually or registration, whatever you want to call that, attached to our club. Now, the door's open for him if he wanted to come back training. I've spoken to him once or twice through the summer. But I think he's now worried about his future, to be honest. I believe he's playing in a PFA game this afternoon up in Manchester with some real big hitters, Premier League players and stuff. And if someone wants to sign Ryan, what they have to do is they have to ring me and make us an offer because he's our player. It's as simple as that. And that's the harsh reality of it. He knows it, very crystal clear. His agent knows, and they're very much aware that we have to be given a fee to be released from his registration. It's no different to anybody who we have under contract. Dejan, we just signed. If someone wanted to take him tomorrow, they have to buy him, unless we decide we want to let him go for free. Now, ultimately, I can't really tell you any more about the business, but nobody. I've had one club at a level above us call me about Ryan, and in the moment I mentioned a figure, they went really quiet. and I've had 2 clubs from step 3, and that's the only information that's relevant to this conversation. That's happened. So Ryan, I should imagine, is a little bit. He'd be worried at the moment because he's not got a club. He won't be getting paid by anybody, and he's sort of sitting in limbo, which is a shame for him, shame for us, shame for everybody. But all through the summer, people have asked what's happened. Nothing's happened to Ryan Glover. Nobody's, we've not done anything wrong. We've done the correct procedure for a player in his situation. Yeah. It's no different to Kwame Thomas was offered a contract, and then 1 or 2 things happened with his physical status in terms of he had an issue with his knee, and we sat off. We both stood back a little bit, and then I decided to go and sign Kai, which meant I didn't have everything in the budget left to sign Kwame. So there was a negotiation, or a potential negotiation, of wage coming down. And at the same time, I said, if something comes up that you feel you have to take Kwame, I would have no problem. Despite the fact I love Kwame Thomas as a person and as a player. Yeah. He's a top lad, and he did fantastically well for us last season. But he saw the opportunity to go and sign at Ebbsfleet. And you know what? I wish him all the best, apart from the 2 games we play against him. But there's 3 really good examples of how differing it can be to players that we offered contracts, or 4 if you include Kobe. 1 or 2 others that I just didn't feel were going to, improve us by keeping them. And there's 2 or 3 lads who probably stayed who may not be absolutely first choice, first team players right now, but I feel it's in the club's best interest to try and keep them as part of our, progression plan.
Yeah. Thank you, Tommy. That's really, really helpful, and the sort of things that knocks on the head, sort of online gossip and nonsense about what's happening, and also shows how important that under-24 rule is. That actually smaller clubs like us, actually have some security, so that Lorent and Josh and Ryan, don't just get stolen away from us.
1,000,000%. Look, we would never achieve the fees that we did for Lorent and for Josh had they not been under 22. It's as simple as that. I mean, as much as we'd like to think everybody plays fairly, if you want one of my players and you know he's over 24, you ain't going to pay X amount of pounds at Christmas. You're going to tell him to wait till June and give it to the player. And that, I understand that happened to me as a player, but I'm now I'm on the dark side now, and I look after the club's best interests the best I can. And look, I genuinely don't look at forums and sites like that. I have got a Twitter or X account and stuff, and I generally use it for information more than anything else. But I don't really read threads or things like that. But I'm aware that people think Ryan and I didn't get on, and it couldn't be further from the truth. I only ever continually get on to players who I think can improve and I can help. And he's one of them. He was one of them. I felt he'd come on in leaps and bounds. But Ollie Harfield, Tyler Frost, the lads that I wanted to retain, that I inherited, of which now there are only 4 left at the club. I don't know if you realise that. That is a big part of what I think good management is. They're not all my players. They're Aldershot's players. The lads I brought in on my players, they're Aldershot Town's players. And I genuinely feel we have far more in the way of potential sellable assets as a football club now. We didn't have many when I walked in the door. Proof of that was we only sold 1. So, and that was probably forced more by the player than anything else. So, I think we're in a better place than we were this time last year in general. But that side of it is like you said, you don't hear a lot of the nitty-gritty parts of it, but in a nutshell, that's what's happened.
That's really helpful, Tommy. Thank you. And I mean, from a personal perspective, I've seen Ryan in all his seasons he's been here. Because he's one of our longest serving players, actually, though it's not very long. And this last season was easily by a million miles the best season. He was 50% better player, which is all credit to the system and you and the club and the coaching and the way the team played. I think we got the best. You got the best out of him that I'd seen anyway. So, that's really helpful. Just a quickie on that. What were your recruitment targets this summer? Obviously, we now know who's gone, so we realise there need to be some replacements. But could you tell us a little bit about your priorities in recruitment this summer?
Spine of the side, really, in terms of bolstering. I think if you look right through the group we have at the moment, including the goalkeepers, we have real competition in all of the main areas. Don't get me wrong, everybody's really important. The wing backs, the forwards, the 10, they're all important. But your goalkeeper, your central defenders, your central midfielders, and your strikers, in my opinion, are the spine of the group. And if that's really strong and stable and reliable, then the bits on the outside can always reattach themselves and be part of a stronger thing. So I think if you look at that in general, of course, I knew Christian Montgomery was going to be like a new signing, a huge new signing. When I signed him this time last year, I was really excited about him being part of last year's group. And had he been, I think we'd have done even better than we did, to be honest. But he's missed a lot of football, so we've doubled up in the recruitment in terms of we lost Christian and Keane, but we signed two, and we give George Milner-Smith another contract, so we needed to bolster in that area. The goalkeepers everybody's talked about, who's going to be number one. I tell you what, I could pick any one of the three, honestly. I really mean that. And just because Marcus has come in, it doesn't mean people shouldn't just assume that he will be the number one. We can play 7 substitutes this year, and we can change 5 at 5 different times. And there's no reason that I won't change the goalkeepers, honestly. You know, if someone's not having a great game at right back or right wing back, you sometimes change him. Or if he's having a great game and he's tired or he's injured, you swap him. So I just think it's something that we shouldn't go by, he's the one, he's number 2, and he's number 3. Everybody will make their own assumptions of that, and that's fine. But it won't be mine. It won't be mine. And they know that. So goalkeeper was somewhere I felt we need to strengthen. Geordie, for me, got a lot of undue criticism last year. I think he cost us about 5 or 6 goals throughout the whole lot. And when you consider we conceded about 80 of them, that's not a bad return for a goalie. With a stronger defence in front of him, I think he becomes stronger because his general goalkeeping, you know, from handling to kicking to distribution, is spot on. But he may not be quite as agile as a Marcus Dewhurst or a Pat Nash. But then, if you're a player in the opposition, you look up to cross the ball and you see somebody who's 6'7", you tend not to bother. So, you know, each of them have got their own fortes and possible, you know, not so strong points. But that was an area we felt we needed to strengthen. Central defence was, excuse me, the one that's gone under the radar, who I think has been one of our better signings, will prove to be one of our best signings, is Cameron Hargreaves. Now, Cameron's one of these guys who is selfless, and I mean that. He is selfless. And everybody who plays with Cameron, whether they're directly in a partnership with him or they're just on the same pitch with him, will come off and think, wow, thank goodness he's in our team and not in their team. He's just one of them guys. He's an infectious lad. He's fit as a fiddle. And he's a good quality. Everybody knows a few lads have followed me from Kings Lynn, but I actually took him there from Bristol Rovers, and I genuinely believe he's much nearer the Bristol Rovers level than he ever was the Kings Lynn level. So he's been a real plus for us. Obviously, Dejan retaining Frosty, Ollie Harfield were huge in my opinion. Jack Barham staying in the building also. So, you know, I think Kai Corbett, whilst not the same as Lorent Tolaj, he's actually a better finisher than Lorent. There you go. Now there's a statement, because Lorent on occasions needed 2 or 3 chances. Now I think Kai is a little bit in between a striker and a 10. So he is a forward. He's a definite forward. And the one that, again, was in the building when I got here and didn't play much football, but I genuinely believe, in my hand and my heart, I think he'll come really good for us, is Hadi. Hadi Gandor hasn't been able to the cow's backside with a banjo in pre-season on the pitch, but in training he has been phenomenal. I mean, his work ethic and his general gameplay without scoring goals has been superb. So, you know what I'm going to say next is I don't care who scores the goals. I just hope and care that we do score goals. And I look around us when Kai and Josh, Hayden Vaughan, the youngster, they'll all chip in. And the midfield lads will start to chip in, as happened in pre-season. Tyler's got a couple, Theo's got a couple. I can see Dejan scoring. I can see both Ryan Jones and Tyler Frost, if they're out there, scoring goals. Centre-halves, we will definitely be a better entity for goals at the other end with the centre-halves we now have in the building also. So I'm really optimistic about the new season. Of course, nobody signs any bad players until they play. And pre-season isn't always the best sort of barometer to judge people on. But I think we've had a real mix of opposition, whether it be EFL or the local teams we played first of all. And I've got to say, our lads adapted themselves really well. So, like I said, I'm stoked for the start of the season, and I'm looking forward to Saturday now.
Were there any conversations, Tommy, about bringing back the likes of Rollin or Hadji, those centre-back pairing? Was there ever a thought, or was it just they're now going to go to the level above and that's where they belong?
Well, neither are signed anyway yet, as far as I'm aware. So they're in the same boat, possibly, as I said to you about strength for the player is the moment the season finishes, because everybody's looking to try and do their business early. We tried to do business with both of them players very, very early. And I would have made the best the best offers I could financially to both of them players, which weren't at their expectation from the level they were coming from. Completely understandable. We then have to get in a queue basically, and they go and speak to the teams that they can or that are interested, because there's a difference between being wanted and there being an interest. I'm sure Ryan Glover has had so many clubs interested in him, but not so many who actually want him when they realise they have to pay a fee for him. So with them two guys being, well, Hadji's not didn't have to be a free transfer, but he is, and Roland certainly is a free transfer. The control is in their hands for the first 6 weeks or so. And then once pre-season goes back, they have to quickly decide, are they going to stay on their own and hope to stay at a level of fitness that they can join a little later, or are they going to accept a deal? We've been in discussions with one of them in particular all the way through the summer. And I haven't ruled out that he will not join us eventually, but he hasn't yet. But watch this space.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's just really interesting, Dad, isn't it? Because we don't often get to see the layers of the politics and what players are thinking, what the agents are thinking. We just always think, Tommy's obviously not wanted them, or maybe they've just said no to the first offer. And I think that's helpful to know. Tommy, in your experience, would you say the chances of players doing that and then coming back with their tail between their legs, is this 5% chance? Does it happen often in the industry? What's that like?
That's a good question, that. To be honest with you, I mean, they should leave the pride at the door, because at the end of the day, if they want to be a working footballer at the start of this season, then their expectations have to be lowered, possibly, because, like I said, they were very fortunate to be on deals at EFL levels, which are just not sustainable or attainable at this level, for our club anyway. So I've not really changed my stance or my level of financial offer. Really, there's been a slight drop, but not a massive amount. So if anything, if they were to come in now, they could probably look back and think, wow, I've lost that amount of money because I waited too long. Now, what I didn't do is wait for them. I had to go and act, but I've said this to you guys before, and I'll say it numerous times to other people. It doesn't matter to me what the face is on top of the shirt or the name on the back of it. If there's a one that's better than the one I have in the building, then I'll do something to make it work. So it's the best opportunity or the best options we have, if they're attainable to us, will be the ones who play. That's how we work.
Yeah, I don't envy the man management, Dad, do you?
No. It's really strange being on the terraces, though, I feel, because, if we were talking about ICI or something like that, there's no way that the customers of ICI would know all the intimate details of people's salaries and contracts. And yet football fans have this feeling they ought to know, why he's not in the building and why they're not signed and, all that nonsense. So I think if this is why it's really helpful to talk to you, Tommy, and you're being very open, that actually people will get about Ryan, because, Ryan's very, very much loved by the fans. Last year
he was by us. Oh, he is. He was by the staff and the players. Honestly,
yeah. We could see that, and he gave a lot, didn't he? Well, in fact, all of them. Kian and Kwame. Kwame, I thought people on the terraces loved Kwame because whenever he came on, and I know you said he was an impact player and it's a squad game, but he would he'd give everything, wouldn't he? And held up the ball in a different way for us. So it was really important. But just turning to budgets, Tommy, what can you say about the budget that you've been given this year, whether that's in comparison to other teams or yourself, how you feel about it?
Comfortable. is what I feel about it. I mean, it hasn't gone down for that. That's the first thing. Again, I think I said this to you last time I spoke, but what went on before I was here, I'm not privy to, and I don't need to be. So the budget, as far as I'm concerned, we've earned the right to be given a little bit more because of what we did last year. Where whatever amounts people think have been given to the club or earned by the club for the rise in attendance or the FA Cup run or the player sales, I don't know. That may well have been spent before I got to the club. I don't know that. So you're asking the wrong person there. But all I will say is anything I've asked for above and beyond in terms of this year, we're going to have to stay over about 13 times instead of last year with only 8. Little things like that. The club have never hesitated in trying to give us what we want to make it the best possible preparation for the team and for us. So, look, I'm in a really happy place still in terms of my job, the people I work for, the people I work with, and the people that work for me. So we're in a really good spot going into the season, as we were last season. Last season, I felt we were on the crest of what's going to happen type of thing. We were right on. We got to the sort of peaking over the top of the hill. I think we've got our knees on the hill now, and we've started to run a bit. So what we got to try and do is run further up the next sort of precipice and push that a little bit further.
Yeah,
I think that's how we feel about this season.
Yeah.
And I reckon, Tommy, if I was to ask people, what's the one thing you'd want us to ask Tommy today? It would probably be around Lorent leaving. I'm guessing people would want to know, in your mind, were you always resigned to this summer, Lorent's going to go and I'm just going to get the best deal? Or was there honestly a part of you that thought we can keep him for another year?
Well, after the last whistle at Dagenham and Redbridge, I genuinely thought he was going to stay for another year. The way they were singing one more year. And you know what? We joked with him. We actually spoke very seriously with Lorent on numerous occasions. Very early into the season, I knew he was going to attract attention, and I knew he only had a year left on it. That season left on his contract. But there was a trigger point there that I knew we were safe, that he would be staying next season. Otherwise, the club would receive the money that they did receive in the end. Now, there was a very, very small window where I tried to change the deal in terms of giving the new contract, therefore paying him a little bit more money, to sign a longer contract and take out the actual fee and try and make it something. If somebody wants him, somebody else will want him. Let's see if they can barter up and the club will do better. And Lorent was all for that, but then he did it. He had a change of representation. And very quickly, it was made very clear to me that they weren't interested in talking about a new contract. So we had to trigger the contract in its original form, which really, at the end of the day, he was a free transfer for us, and he wasn't one of our highest paid players. So from that, neither was Josh Stokes by a long chalk. So the fact that both of them guys came into the building for free and left the building and left, the club with whatever it is the club got for them, looks, in my opinion, is almost the cherry on top of a recruitment cake. You get them in for free, the output is phenomenal, and you sell them for much more than you've put into them. So, I think people just have to take that as read and believe me and say it was a fantastic bit of business for the club to get them, to use them, and for them to love their experience here. And I'm sure neither of them will forget their experiences with Aldershot. I'm still in contact with both lads, and I'll speak to both of them before the season starts to wish them all the best. But they're very, very humble and thankful of what we as a staff and a club have done for them to help them on the course that they want to be on. So, and I genuinely think they've both gone to good clubs, and I think they both should have elongated careers in the EFL at least.
Yeah, Dad, we've waxed lyrical about Josh and Lorent for many, many days. And even though they weren't with us that long, you're right, Tommy, the impact they had and the memories they've made, 100%, it'll be very positive. They'll always be loved. And we agree with you about kicking on now to that next level for both of them. Really keen to see how they do this season. Do you feel with all the signings you've made that you have replaced Josh and Lorent? Would you say like for like, I've done that, one in, one out? Or is it now a more of we want goals from lots of different sources? I haven't brought in Hayden to match Josh or things like that.
That's a good question again. It's another one I've been asked by somebody else this morning. And Dan, I'm going to say the same to you, is you cannot keep pulling diamonds out the dirt and rubbing them down and they become really shiny. That doesn't happen. So what I believe, we have to tweak what we're doing to accommodate what we're seeing when we're recruiting. So whilst last year I talked to you about how does our recruitment process work? Well, I like a certain type of player. This year, the type of player and what he has to have as an ingredient may be slightly different when we haven't got the ball, moreover, in his willingness to run harder and faster when we haven't got the ball. Now, you might think, well, Josh Barrett. And well, Josh Barrett has bought into that in pre-season. And I have to tell you, his numbers through pre-season are probably in the top 4 or 5 for distances covered on a pitch, which people won't believe, but it's true. And that hasn't deterred from what he can give us on the ball. So I think we're going to be a lot more high energy, a lot more mobility. And like I said, I think we're going to be a better defensive all-round team. That doesn't mean we're going to park buses. We might now and again, but I think we're going to be, the collective is going to be stronger than the individual. And last year, I think certainly people from outside and 1 or 2 people around the club felt we relied heavily on them. We did, but we didn't. One of our biggest wins in the run-in was at Gateshead, and neither Josh, Lorent, or Jack actually started the game. So from that point of view, I knew we could win and play games without them guys, and we would just have a different dynamic. And that was one of my sort of litmus test paper things when I mentioned the team to the staff a few hours before the game. They were like, we've got to win the game. Well, I know we've got to win the game, and that's a hell of a bench to come off if we're still 0-0 at 60 minutes. So, yeah, I think my thinking has changed slightly in terms of the overall output I want from each player, and that's figured heavily in the recruitment. I think we've recruited, guys who have been right at the speed at whatever level they're playing at. They might all not have been from this level, might have been above, might have been below, but they've been really high in the data, in the statistics, and the KPIs that I've been looking for our additions.
And Tommy, does that include youngsters like Hayden Vaughan and Pat Nash and Luke Jenkins? Are they? We mustn't build them up beyond realistic expectations, but are they the sort of guys who could step up and go the same route as Josh or Lorent?
Yeah, I think, like I said to you at the beginning of this interview, I think our club is laden with sellable assets at this moment in time. Last year at this team, I didn't know whether we were or whether we weren't. I genuinely thought we had really good players in Ollie Harfield, in Ryan Glover, in Josh Stokes, who hadn't been proven at the level, neither Lorent. But I always felt there's others there. There's people in the building who are still there who I know are getting better and better and better because of the time they're spending with us. But this season, I'm thinking, if we do anything close to what we did last, the request for scout passes at our place last season went through the roof, and I can't see that changing because of the generic sort of the dynamics of our squad, the demographics of our squad. A lot of them have had really, really good youth and young pro careers, if you like, and they've had to take a step back to get more senior football. But people like Luke Jenkins, Lucky Bird, Cameron Hargreaves, they put in 50, 60, 100 games at step 2. Now they're 22, 23s. I just think it's their time again. So, I'm really confident in the lads. I'm not at all worried about their abilities. I think somebody like Hayden Vaughan, the step he's made is very similar to Josh Stokes. But if you look at the two guys just visually, Josh was physically ready to take the wallop. Hayden is sharper, and he's probably a little bit more nasty, I'd say, in a funny little way, without being particularly physical about it. But he's got a very different skill set to do the very same thing that Josh was doing. I could see him scoring goals for us. But look, it's all a fluid thing in terms of integrating him into the side. We might play a slightly different formation on occasions. But like I said, I'm really interested to see how it all gels together, and I'm sure.
Yeah, so are we. And you must be really pleased. You've already mentioned it, but you must be really pleased to have Christian Magoma, back and hopefully 100% fit.
Massively. I mean, you mentioned earlier, or you asked me about, people. It's not the right thing to say put the tail between the legs and come back. But Christian, we could easily have said, look, we looked after you till you got fit, go in and sort yourself out. But we came to an agreement very early on, and it was the chairman's initiative, this, by the way, and he needs huge credit for it. He said to me in about January, February, when is Christian going to play? I went, look, you do well to play this season. Of course, the club invested good money in Christian in terms of his salary. Of course, they had the extra burden of the operation and all the rehabilitation costs that the club bared for him. And I was astonished when, not because it was Shahid, but because it doesn't happen very often in football clubs. But he said to me, let's do a deal with him to make him very, very settled in his mind that he has a place next year to play football. And I thought that was fantastic. And Christian, in fairness, he's not at the same pay grade as he was last year yet, but if he plays, he can get back to that. And I think that was really a touch of class from our end, I thought. And it wasn't my initiative. I'm not taking the credit for it, but I was completely on board when the chairman said to me, look, let's get him sorted out. And I genuinely feel that the chairman and the board deserve a pat on the back for that one.
Yeah.
But I just, you got to remember, he's missed the era of football. We've got to manage him. He'll play, he might not play, he'll play a lot, and then he might not play a little bit. And it's got to be something, I've got to be led by the medical and my backroom staff, because I want him to play. I can see what he would bring to us. He's a bloke, he's a leader, and he's a very good footballer.
Yeah. It really feels like the fans are really anticipating seeing Christian for that whole season. As you said, obviously he needs to get back up to speed, been out of the game for a while, but I think everybody's very excited to just see this is what Christian can offer. This is why we signed him. Let's see a whole season and judge then. And I feel a little bit similar with Josh Barrett, actually. Obviously, he joined partway through. Dan, we had a really good chat, didn't we, last season with Josh, where he was really honest about where he was at with his form, his fitness, what's gone before, this tag that seems to follow him about being a bit of a luxury 10 and a luxury player, which a lot of the time isn't particularly warranted. Tommy, do you think actually this year you're excited for him to almost take that role by the scruff of the neck? He can maybe sit where Josh was. He can have a lot more responsibility. He's now getting a full season at the club. Feels like, for me especially, I'm really excited to see what Josh brings this year.
Yeah, I mean, look, Josh is an undoubtedly talented lad, and I've been at clubs with him before. Somewhere I've managed him and somewhere I haven't. And I've watched a guy who, he'll say the same thing, hasn't quite lived up to what his ability should get him to live to, in my opinion. Now, before he signed his new contract here, I had a chat with him and I said, you got to buy into this, Josh, that you're not a kid anymore, you're a fella. I've got to say, by the way, he was really patient and adult last season, because he knew that I feel highly of him when he's on the football pitch, and I understand I'll take the rough with the smooth when it's not going for him. But he didn't once come moaning and whinging as to why he wasn't playing more game time, because he understood that the three guys at the top of the pitch, as Kwame did, it was working and he didn't want to interrupt that. But he loved the training with Lorent and Josh and stuff. And now people like Kai and him and James Henry, Dejan, they're all of a very similar wavelength. They're from a level up here in terms of mentally attacking a football match. Now, physically, Josh has always been thrown there. He doesn't work hard enough. He's overweight. He's lazy. He's this, he's that. Day one of pre-season, I said to the players, we are going to be a front-footed, pressing, running team. If you don't want to be here, there's the door. And Josh sat firmly still and just laughed at me. And I went, and that includes you. And he was like, I know. And he was joking the other day. He was sitting with an ice pack on his head when he come off during the Bromley game, which was really warm. And he just looked at me and went, Gaffer, the pennies dropped. I went, okay, good. So, yeah, he's had a really good, honestly, he's had a really good pre-season. As long as I've known Josh, I've never seen him complete a pre-season. So he's in about the top 4 or 5 for minutes played and distances covered over this. And not just running around, it's, high speed stuff and that. But his technical ability, I just can't see there not being some really good moments for Josh. And I think he's taken a mantle of leading himself. I actually threw him the armband at one of the friendly games early on, and it didn't look heavy on his arm, to be honest with you. So, yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does.
We loved talking to Josh, didn't we, Liam? we just really appreciate it. It was exactly as you were saying, Tommy. Down to earth, grown up, and sort of a guy who we felt, he's done some thinking about stuff, and all the stuff about fitness and stuff. Well, actually, you can get fitter, but if you haven't got talent, you're stuck. And he's actually got talent, hasn't he? We've seen that. So, but I think we're both I'm really excited to see Josh, because I think he makes me smile. Actually, some of the stuff he does is ridiculous in terms of thinking it through. But when it works, it's brilliant, isn't it?
It is. Listen, we see them incidences on a daily basis. Trust me, he does things. Sometimes he'll frustrate the hell out of you in a training session the same, but I don't react to that anymore. I think when he was younger, he wanted to be told, you've got to work harder. I think it was something that he needed. He needed that to keep him going. Now he doesn't. He just needs to hear, react, and bump, he's off, and he reacts. It doesn't mean I'm telling him, but he just hears that word and off he goes. But yeah, I think if you ask any one of the players individually who's the most talented player in the building, they'd probably all say him. So don't get me wrong, now we've got James Henry in the building, who's a 35-year-old fella who's played God knows how many games in the EFL. He's got a genuine career behind him. He's only going to be a fantastic addition to our group because of the experience he brings, and his demeanour around the players is excellent. He's been with us about 3 weeks before we signed him, and I can tell you the truth about that one as well. He came in as a favour to a friend of mine to keep himself fit, because the agent was completely expecting numerous EFL offers because of how well he's done over the last. I think in the last 4 years, he scored 50 odd goals from a midfield or an attacking midfield role in 200 games. So he's got a hell of a straight record in League 2 and League 1. So it wouldn't have been, unreasonable to think there would be people wanting to sign him. But as we were saying, sometimes you have to go where somebody wants you rather than where somebody is interested in you. And he came in to train with us, and he just blew us away staff-wise, and thinking how he's approached it. And it didn't surprise me that he was a really good pro, but his ability, his mobility, and his use of fitting in with the way we play, it was just like, whoa, if we can get hold of him, we should try and get him. And it didn't take a lot of chat, to be honest with you. He's a local lad, fairly local anyway. He's only half an hour away from the training ground. So when the opportunity came to bring him on board, we just feel it's another one under the radar one. Gone, we didn't go looking for James. He actually came to us, which happened, by the way, with one or two really big names that you will have read have gone somewhere else recently. We nearly signed one or two like that, but I just felt we wanted to hold as long as we could, because I didn't think it was their first choice, and I didn't want somebody here who was just going to come here because it was another year on the payroll or whatever. And James certainly didn't give me that impression.
Okay, Tommy, let's just finish by thinking bigger picture. Obviously, competitive league, it really looks like this season there's probably 8 teams who you could say will finish maybe top 3. Who are you seeing as maybe starting favourites or ones to be wary of? Who are you impressed by when you look at the league table this year?
Well, I haven't looked at the league table yet because there's not one, but I know what you mean. Look, I mean, the teams Forest Green and Sutton who come down from the EFL should be strong. They've had a few years Forest Green, but Sutton have had a couple of years up there. And if media is to be believed, then certainly Forest Green, Oldham, York, Southend, now the business has been taken over there. They will be heavy-handed in terms of their finances and what they have to play with. So you've got to look at them sort of guys being forerunners. But I look at people like Altrincham and Halifax, who didn't have that sort of extra financial clout last year, but still went all the distance. Gateshead, ourselves. I think it's really open. I don't think there is a Chesterfield. I don't think there's a team in the division with the best players who are going to just outscore everybody every week. But it's all about how you start the season and how you get into your rhythm. I believe this, and I probably said it to you last year. If you get off on a good footing, that might mean only one game, by the way. Like we did, we won one and then we lost 2 last year. But we had a momentum from the first game, knowing what their atmosphere was going to be like at the ground. We knew when we come back, I think we had Wealdstone our second game at home, and we went and won again, and that sort of kicked us on a little bit. So yeah, I mean, I'm genuinely, I don't take much notice of what other teams do in terms of their business. Obviously, if there was a player that we were interested in and he signs for somebody, in our division, I would take note of that. But look, we got to play them all twice. So last year there was only, how many were there? There weren't many that beat us twice. I know that. Chesterfield were one of them. But other than that, certainly the other team that went up didn't even beat us once. So from that point of view, we went and beat them again at the weekend. So I said to the players after the game against Bromley on Saturday, that team went out of our division, and it was almost that team actually that played against us. So I genuinely feel we've got the tools to be competitive. How competitive, I'll tell you after 10 or 12 games. But I know the preparation has been as good as we can give them, and I just hope for health and wellness for all my players, and they give I know they'll give what they've got, and if what they've got to give is good enough, I don't think we'd be far away.
Yeah, that's fair. We'd mentioned Southend in passing, haven't we, Dad? Obviously, money bags now could be interesting.
Yeah.
Well, it grates me a little bit, though. It does grate me a little bit because, and I'm not having a dig at Southend here or anybody else for that matter, but there are about 3 or 4 teams who infrastructurally and behind the scenes just haven't done it right for numerous seasons now. There's certain teams in this division and their grounds aren't good enough. They're not capable of sustaining this level or the next. So from that point of view, or the one down actually, some of them. So we're a club, and I keep saying this, that they do everything correctly, as far as I can see anyway. And don't get me wrong, if I was managing one of them clubs, I'd want it to get over the line in change. Of course I do. And it's all about the fans, and I live in Southend. And the mood, other than the other weekend when all that business went on, the mood in general has become lighter about the football, without a doubt. There's an expectation here. So it's going to be a different weight on Kev and his staff's shoulders, but look, they were a very good side with a very tied pair of hands last year, and I think they'll only get stronger. They know what they're doing. So
yeah. At grassroots level, there was quite a bit of unhappiness amongst lots of fans about the Southend situation, but also Woking and others, where there are 3 clubs that really could have been kicked out of the league because of their financial situations, and we don't want to see. I mean, we don't want to see Woking go out of our league. Really, we don't. But I tell you what, Tommy, it will be fun when Cian Harris comes back, and if he's playing, of course, if he's chosen. There are a few like that when Kwame comes. I mean, when Kwame comes back with Ebbsfleet, he'll be warmly welcome. But there's 1 or 2 tasty games coming, aren't there?
Yeah. No, that will be interesting. I think Cian, if you knew Cian as an individual, that'll be like waters off a duck's back to him. In fact, it may well stoke his fire a little bit. That. I mean, I'm a more relaxed guy you've never seen. Or you have. You've seen him play plenty enough, so he takes a lot of it in his stride. But, genuinely, I don't want to see Woking go to the pan. I don't want to see that. No. I want to see them utterly humiliated when we play them twice, but that's about it. After that, I quite like their manager. I've had a relationship with him in football before, and I think, and I said it when he got the job, that he will turn it around, give him time and give him the right tools. But I don't know exactly what's going on there now, and it's none of my business, so I'd rather not comment on them. But the Southend, because I live in the town, I know what's been going on here, and I'm pleased, really pleased for the football people and the fans, which it's all about, that they have a football club, it seems, back on track, literally. Well, they've got it back on track. They've got C2C on the front of their shirt, so that's a real company. Yeah.
That's good. And sort of just to tie things up, Tommy, because we really appreciate your time, but is there a message that you have for the fans about, you're building, obviously, you're managing the club, but you're also building a future for us, and we can see that. And a lot of us that use our eyes and ears can see that. Is there a message, at the start of a new season that you'd like to give to the fans?
I'd like to think that they've got to know me, they've got to know my staff, and they've got to know the way that we ask the players to present themselves on a Saturday and on a Tuesday. We ain't going to change massive amount. There'll be new faces, there'll be new heroes, I think, created this season, and I hope that's the case. All I'd say is they need to rinse and repeat what they gave us last season, which was unwavering support, home and away. Even I'll never forget getting clapped off at half time, losing 5-0 to Eastleigh. You know, I was astonished. We got clapped off then. I was completely expecting the bird and the boos, and it never happened. And we came back and and I keep saying this, we should have won that game 8-5. We lost it 5-3, and that just it cemented my belief that they are completely behind the team. And our journey to Swindon, then Stockport home and away, and then obviously West Brom. It just made me think this club deserves to be at the top end of a table and out the other end of it, not the bottom end. So I don't want to be involved in that. But we only do it going together. You know, I've used this term before. We all have the same collective intention, and that is to improve on previous season. Now, that might be conceding less goals, scoring more goals, doing both. If that happens, we'll definitely go higher in the table. But it might be, you know, we stabilised last year. We definitely stabilised after a many seasons of hanging in there and no cup run and nothing really to go, oh, that was good. Not really, you know, individual moments. Well, this year, if we can repeat what we did last year, I'm sure people will be pleased. But I completely understand the expectation, and I'm prepared for that. And like I said, people are entitled to their opinion, but I don't have to listen to it. So that's going to be my approach. As I said before, I manage, you support. That's your job.
Understood, gaffer.
Yeah, that is definitely your phrase. Definitely your phrase. Yeah, Tommy, thanks so much for your time. If we could have an unbeaten start till Christmas, that'd be great. That would be really beneficial for our heart states.
Yeah, the one thing you'd say about this division this season, there's no period in it that looks easy. No. It's not a game we go, oh, well, fancy used to go bump, 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 win there. We did do that last season once we got started. I don't think it's going to be like that this season where you can assume you're going to get certain points per month. It's going to be every game is a new thing. It's a new project. We either win it or we don't lose it. That'll be the approach.
Yeah. Feels like Christmas Eve. The season's coming.
Well, we'll be there, Tommy, and you know, we have our season tickets in a glass case, and it will be out of the case, and we'll be there. So we'll wish you and the players and the support staff all the very best. So, you know, all the best. And I'm sure we'll see you and some of the players during the season.
No problem. I appreciate your time as well, fellas. Thanks very much.